What's up, guys? So, Love Hilal, in many of his videos, makes many good points. But in this video here, he makes some points that have to be contested. For example, you're going to see in a second, he's going to run cover for the Stop Asian Hate movement, which, well, if you didn't know, the Stop Asian Hate movement was literally funded by the FBI and was literally funded by the ADL. You can't make this up. And has many ties to the carceral state and the Zionist lobby. Okay. We're going to go over an article with Dylan Rodriguez. Also, Love Hilal does, when he talks about India, he doesn't even talk about India's ties with the Zionist entity and the fact that India is the 5th largest trading partner of the Zionist entity, and the ties between Modi, the Zionist entity, the Hindutvas, and Elbit. Love Hilal doesn't mention China's ties with the Zionist entity. The fact that China is the 2nd largest trading partner of the Zionist entity and the largest source of imports into the Zionist entity are from China. Also, South Korea and the Zionist entity. Love Hilal won't touch this with a 12-foot stick. Japan and the Zionist entity, and Love Hilal's half Japanese. He won't even talk about this, that Japan has relations with the Zionist entity. Or Thailand and the Zionist entity, and the fact that Thai workers steal Palestinian sovereignty, settle on Palestinian land to work for the Zionist entity. Which is why I will never do a training camp in Thailand. Again, I'm part Palestinian. Hello. 15% of my ancestry is from Balad Hashem, aka the Levant. And some of that's Palestinian from mostly a Druze background in the town of Daliat al-Carmel. I also do have some Palestinian Christian origins in Al-Lid and Al-Ramla, as well as Lebanese Shia Muslim origins from Saida, Yemeni Shia Muslim origins from Amran and Raidah and Huth, Yemeni Sunni Muslim origins from Al-Maqalla, Saudi origins from places like Mecca and Medina, Iraqi origins from Baghdad and Basra and Tikrit, a little bit from Najaf and Karbala, some Georgian origins from the Republic of Georgia, home of Ilya Tapuria. So, again, I'm overqualified to talk about this, being that I'm half West Asian. So let's get into the video.
So being a mixed breed, I thought I'd follow up with a video about my worst other half. I'm joking, obviously. Growing up Asian, I realized one thing. Well, actually, I realized a lot of things. But hear me out. We get made fun of a lot. So let's address the elephant in the room. The most prominent characteristic of an East Asian is our eyes.
But the reason why East Asians get ridiculed is because of their ties, their normalization. The only country that in East Asia that is anti-Zionist is DPRK, right? Look at Thailand, Zionist normalization, right? Japan, Zionist normalization. South Korea, Zionist normalization. China, Zionist normalization, right? India, Zionist normalization. And then obviously, Stop API Hate literally collaborates with the Zionist ADL and literally collaborates with the FBI. So again, this is like surface level pop culture analysis. And it's just cringe. He doesn't even go into the details. And that's what makes it cringe.
Asian community. Us low-key being treated as like the weak link of all races. Now, I understand that Asia is very broad, okay? There's West Asia.
West Asia, that's where I'm from. I have family from Saida in Lebanon, Daliat al-Carmel in Palestine, Al-Ramla in Palestine, Al-Lid in Palestine, Yibna in Palestine. I have family from Raidah, Amran, Huth, Al-Hazm, Marib, where else? Sana'a, Al-Ghaida, Al-Makala, Shaubah. In Yemen, I have family from Mecca and Medina in Saudi. I have family from Tikrit, Baghdad, Najaf, Karbala, Basra, Haditha, Ramadi, Al-Qosh, Talkif, Telskuf, that's my dad's side, in Iraq, so Ajara in the Republic of Georgia. I am West Asian. So, and you're going to get a West Asian critique of this shallow surface level pop culture analysis. Now, I don't know if Love Hilal is being ignorant or malicious or misinformed or maybe all of the above, but these points have to be called out.
East Asia, North Asia, but in my opinion, my South Asian brothers and sisters get it the worst out of everybody I know. If you've ever wondered why there's so many Indian jokes, let me show you why.
But let me show you why. India's collaboration with the Zionist entity, and this starts with Nehru, and the fact that Nehru, the guy who founded the Republic of India, it's a joke that it's even called a republic, is a Zionist. And also the caste system, and the caste system in India is blatantly Islamophobic. And, Indian society is divided into the Brahmins, priestly class, Kshatriya, warriors, Vaishyas, merchants, artists, tradesmen, farmers, Shudras, laboring class. And then and then you have these local adaptations called Jati. And then if you're born outside the caste system, you're called a Dalit, and which includes India's tribal population. And Shudras, Dalits, and tribal populations are heavily oppressed. And and every religion in India practices casteism, right? But it really manifests itself in the Hindutva BJP ideology. And by the way, India is the 5th largest trading partner of the Zionist entity. And India, like the Zionist entity, has a really, really Islamophobic ideology. And the whole genocide of Kashmir, the ethnic cleansing of Kashmir, the settler colonialism in Kashmir. Come on, bro. This is why people don't like India. Again, this is like Love Hilal does like really surface level, shallow pop culture punditry, and he's not really analytical or intellectual on this topic. Now, he is on many other topics, maybe not many other, but some other topics, but this is just shallow. What he's doing here is shallow level pop culture punditry. It's what it is. Let's go to my second point.
Stereotype about being smart is just not true for your ass. Now, to get a little bit more serious, because some of you guys genuinely care about my thoughts and opinions on more current, relevant topics, love and appreciate you guys. Did my software just emo? Anyways, during and slightly after the pandemic, a large amount of hate crimes towards Asian people came about. And in response to that, we created a movement called Stop Asian Hate. And if
So now are you admitting that you're working for the ADL and the FBI? Are you a Fed? Because let me spread some knowledge on you, young man. The Stop API Hate or Stop Asian Hate movement is largely funded by the FBI and by the ADL. This is an article from Dylan Rodriguez, and it's called How the Stop Asian Hate Movement Became Entwined with Zionism, Policing, and Counterinsurgency. Now, Dylan Rodriguez himself has a very mixed record, but on this subject in particular, he is right. So, founded on March 19, 2020, in response to the alarming escalation in xenophobia and bigotry resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, Stop AAPI Hate immediately garnered corporate, media, and philanthropic attention as a national coalition developed by 2 well-established nonprofit organizations, API Equity and the Chinese for Affirmative Action, and the San Francisco State University Department of Asian American Studies. Developed as the nation's largest reporting center tracking anti-AAPI hate acts, Stop Asian Hate's data collection framework reproduces the terms and methods of criminology, even as the organization asserts it is grounded in the belief that we must confront racism at its root with comprehensive non-carceral solutions. The coalition's reporting apparatus automizes hate acts as discrete individual events and interpersonal encounters, producing a dynamic, evolving database that is cited by U.S. police, the U.S. DOJ, Congress, and other administrative units of the carceral state. By way of example, FBI agent Susanna Mapu, speaking on a 2021 panel alongside one of Stop AAPI Hate's co-founders, endorsed the latter's use of the broad category hate incidents as a supplement to the narrower judicial concept of hate crimes, by offering a presentation slide exclaiming, "We want to know about them both. Report to local law enforcement or FBI." Mapu continued, "The reason I say here that we want to know about both is because as you know, the FBI holds all the data. We want to know all the statistics." So this is the AAPI Stop Asian Hate Summit that Rodriguez is referencing. So you have Karen King, partner at Morvillo Abramovitz, Zionist, Grand Iason, and Anello law firm, PC law, sound like a law firm, or maybe that's accountants, I don't know. You have Manjusha Kulkarni, co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate and executive director of the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, so a think tanker. You know, Special Agent Susanna Mapu, FBI of Tampa, primary civil rights representative for the Tampa Division Field Office. Ashley Washington, Assistant United States Attorney, DOJ, Jacksonville. And I don't know who these people are. And this is the slide he's talking about. So the fact they're using a carceral approach and collaborating with the deep state and, you know, the federal government, the armed wing of the ruling class, and the fact that this man is hyping up Stop Asian Hate, even though it's funded by organizations like the Open Society Foundation, aka George Soros, it's a big red flag. So Stop AAPI Hate gathered almost 2,000 incident reports of coronavirus discrimination during its first 2 months of research. And its ongoing efforts have attracted financial and political support from foundations, police, state governments, the Biden-Harris administration, well-funded Asian American nonprofits, and numerous celebrities, academics, industry executives, and cultural/social media influencers. In addition to receiving $10 million from California's API equity budget to track and respond and prevent incidents of racial bias and harm, the coalition has obtained funding from the Asian American Foundation, Hewlett Foundation, Open Society Foundations, and Kaiser Permanente. Reflecting the entrepreneurial logic of the group's ascension, 2 of the coalition's administrative leaders published a USA Today opinion piece for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, calling on policymakers, government agencies, and others to invest in partnerships between civil rights agencies and trusted community-based organizations while strengthening existing protections and enforcement and passing new civil rights laws. Stop AAPI Hate foregrounds narrative change as a primary area of mobilization, specifically monitoring the organization's participation in hundreds of speaking engagements with audiences ranging from members of Congress, the Commission on Civil Rights, the UN, and the World Bank, to a range of policymakers, students, and educators, as well as businesses, entertainers, and nonprofit leaders. The unspoken assumption guiding this work appears to be the notion that the bureaucratic, administrative, industry, and carceral state elites should be the primary audiences and actors for such narrative change. Again, they're founded by the feds. Oh, and if you want to see... I'm going to keep going on this. Responding to a previous version of the article, Stop AAPI Hate asserts that any claim it is a police-friendly organization is false. Rather, core to its mission is advocating for alternatives to carceral approaches. Their objection describes the group's documented history of championing more comprehensive solutions beyond policing, highlighting Stop AAPI Hate's co-signing of a 2024 public letter exposing expansion of New York's hate crime laws, while quoting the coalition's co-founders' 2022 Time op-ed. The problem with investing in ineffective solutions like policing is that they keep us from adopting methods that will actually make us safer and that our community wants. These methods involve investing in our communities, not policing. Yet a body of evidence suggests that primary components of Stop AAPI Hate's work and advocacy are not only passively compatible with the paradigms of policing and carceral state, but are also actively cultivated to contribute to the state's criminal justice functions. A 2021 KCAL television report describes Stop AAPI Hate's origins as a clearinghouse for information because of gaps in record keeping between law enforcement agencies, with co-founder Manjusha Kulkarni affirming that police don't always share that information with the DOJ, with the FBI, and with the state attorneys general. Again, this draws a lot of suspicious light on Love Hilal. I don't know if he's just misinformed or if he's, intentionally malicious in this particular situation. So Stop AAPI Hate's leadership has conspicuously abrogated the group's stated I need to read this paragraph. Further, they're reflecting the compatibility of Stop AAPI Hate's Hate Act data collection with criminal justice and policing frameworks. A senior program specialist with the DOJ's Office of Community Oriented Policing Services, COPS, quite fitting name, cites Stop AAPI Hate's collecting and tracking of AAPI hate and discrimination incidents during the COVID-19 pandemic, alongside their discussion of the FBI's Uniform Crime Report. Relatedly, California Governor Gavin Newsom's Golden State Plan to Counter Anti-Semitism highlights a January 2024 event that focused on the size and scope of hate crime and from a data perspective, and which included panelists from the FBI, CADOJ, California DOJ, and Stop AAPI Hate. Stop AAPI Hate's leadership has conspicuously abrogated the group's stated non-carceral principles in many times, stunning ways. Kulkarni, during 2022 testimony to the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, states her support for new federal hate crime legislation that would expand carceral punishment for hate crime offenses, create federally funded state-run hotlines dedicated to receiving reports of hate crimes and other incidents of anti-AAPI discrimination, and provide victims with guidance on which law enforcement officials and community services groups to contact for further help. Further, the FBI reports that in the summer of 2021, as part of a project intended to address the barriers that prevent people in Asian American communities from reporting hate crimes, its San Francisco office convened a meeting with Stop AAPI Hate co-founder Russell Jung, whose recommendations for addressing the reporting gap included recruiting more FBI agents and personnel from diverse backgrounds and using Asian language media to encourage reporting. It is difficult to comport such congressional testimony and FBI reported recommendations with the previously cited Time op-ed. So you can see there's a pattern of behavior with the Stop Asian Hate movement, particularly with Stop AAPI Hate, in which Stop AAPI Hate is collaborating with the police state and carceral organizations such as the FBI, California Department of Justice, et cetera, et cetera. And let's talk about their Zionist connections, because this critique of Love Hilal would not be complete without talking about Stop Asian Hate's Zionist connections. So perhaps the most significant 21st century development in the political economy of the Asian American organizations has been the lightning quick emergence of the Asian American Foundation, founded in May 2021. TAAF garnered over $1 billion in its first year of existence, including influxes from the Ford, MacArthur, and Mellon Foundations, Bank of America, Etsy, Coca-Cola, Citi Foundation, Merck, and Zoom. Led by a board that includes the founder and chair of Himalaya Capital, the CEO of Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts, a global firm managing over $500 billion. The co-founder of the Alibaba Group, also the governor of the NBA's Brooklyn Nets, and women's WNBA New York Liberty, co-founder of Yahoo, CEO of Citadel Securities. TAAF boasts a 5-year portfolio strategy to distribute grants to best-in-class organizations working to mobilize against hate and violence, educate communities, and reclaim our narratives. The presence of the ADL National Director and CEO on TAAF's board seems to be a key political and organizational influence on the foundation's mission. Described in a philanthropical periodical as the only non-Asian on the board, Greenblatt consistently affirms the ADL's involvement in the creation of TAAF, stating that in a 2021 interview with actor Daniel Day Kim, that we at the ADL were so humbled and proud to share our experience and to help incubate the Asian American Foundation. Greenblatt reiterates at the ADL's 2024 National Leadership Summit that the organization helped to incubate and launch the Asian American Foundation, and previously effused in a 2023 social media post, "I'm humbled to serve on the TAAF board and share what the ADL has learned over the years about fighting anti-Semitism to stop AAPI hate, hashtag Together We Build." So why is this man, who is a Zionist operative, Jonathan Greenblatt, on the board for an Asian American foundation? This is crazy, and this is suspicious, right? This shows that the Stop Asian Hate movement is Zionist, right? Given the ADL's relative inattention to building remotely comparable organizational relationships with Asian American groups prior to 2021, it is appropriate to raise the question as to why the emergence of the Stop Asian Hate movement appears to have catalyzed a partial redirection of the ADL's interest, resources, and public-facing attention to TAAF and other Asian American organizations, which would also be correct in this situation, including Stop AAPI Hate. The ADL's Center for Technology and Society, which indicated a dramatic spike in anti-Asian sentiment in 2020, helped advance a hate-centered framing of rising anti-Asian violence during the early period of the COVID-19 pandemic. E-Jewish Philanthropy describes TAAF's mission and operations in terms that portray it as an emergent Asian American analog of the ADL, stating that Greenblatt's role is primarily to support TAAF in its work with existing AAPI organizations whose mission is to fight hate and extremism, such as Asian Americans advancing justice and Stop AAPI Hate. Echoing this depiction, the ADL notes in its 2023 year review that it accelerated our program to embed investigators from partner organizations alongside the ADL Center on Extremism. We now host embeds from TAAF, the Asian American Foundation. I mean, this fits a pattern of like Japanese, Chinese, Thais, and Indians and Koreans collaborating with the Zionists. It fits that pattern of behavior that I described earlier in this video, man. So TAAF, Stop API Hate, and other Stop Asian Hate organizations operationally replicate the ADL's organizational fixation on hate as a primary unit of information gathering, public discourse, common sense making, and the carceral state. As Stop Asian Hate organizations reproduce the ADL's methods, it is worth raising a question. What are the consequences of the movement's organizational attachments to hate-based victimization frameworks? Since its founding in 1913, the ADL has functioned as a watchdog organization that ostensibly identifies anti-Semitic activities and calls on institutional leaders, state officials, corporations, and media outlets to condemn, fire, or otherwise disaffiliate from those it deems culpable. Crucially, the ADL endorses a notion of anti-Semitism closely aligned with the definition adopted in 2016 by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The IHRA's conception of the term has faced mounting scholarly, legal, and activist criticism for conflating political criticism of the Zionist entity and the ethno-supremacist political ideology of Zionism with anti-Semitism. Criticisms of the ADL's and IHRA's conflation of political opposition to Zionism with anti-Semitism have emerged from a range of scholarly, human rights, free speech, decolonial, Palestinian liberationist, radical feminist, and abolitionist perspectives, and have periodically been covered by global media outlets. Recently, by the inaugural conference of the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism, convened a broad community of scholars, including Rabab Abdul Hadi, Emaya Gelman, Christine Hong, Jennifer Kelly, Sean Malloy, and Alana Lenton. Alana Lenton, that's a red flag because she's a Zionist settler. Gelman, I believe she is a liberal Zionist. It's a red flag, right? So to develop and they convene to develop a rigorous archival, theoretical, and practical responses to demystify this conflation. Gelman, who calls herself anti-Zionist, I actually think she's a liberal Zionist because of, the words she's going to use in a second. Gelman, a quote-unquote Jewish anti-Zionist, I actually think she's a liberal Zionist gatekeeper, organizer, and teacher, writes in Boston Review, at a time when it should be easier to see the ADL as a conservative knowledge production agency, a resurgence of concern with hate has only consolidated its power. The ADL has long defined itself as the leading anti-hate organization in the world. Crucially, Gelman shows since at least the 1960s. The ADL has targeted civil rights groups from liberals to revolutionaries. The ADL has also surveilled ethnic representational groups, particularly Arabs and blacks, Arab and black groups, concerned. Well, she says, what about the Zionist treatment of Palestinians? Concerned about Zionist settler colonialism. And this is where Gelman outs herself as a liberal Zionist. Concerned about Zionist treatment of Palestinians. No, concerned about the settler colonialism, the Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine, the Zionists stealing land, including some of my family's land in Palestine, and ethnically cleansing and genociding Palestinians. That's what she should be saying. Concerned about Zionist treatment of Palestinians. In the present, the ADL has continued to militate against internationalist, intersectional anti-racism and has used its status as the nation's premier civil rights group to do so. Gelman's analytic history demystifies Greenblatt's grandstanding declaration of alliance. The Asian American community has been under siege, and it's now the Jewish community. It's moments like this when allyship matters. Greenblatt's projection of Jewish Asian American allyship depicts a coalition of reaction against various notions of siege, not limited to hate crimes and hate incidents. This linkage, both organizational and ideological, acts as an analogy of exceptional victimhood that tethers the figure of the violated Asian American to the ADL's Zionist notion of Jewishness. Crucially, Greenblatt has infamously asserted that anti-Zionism is genocide and every Jewish person is a Zionist. Right? So every Jewish, I actually think that, most Jews, like 98%, are liberal Zionists. And that's why I actually don't organize with JVP. I don't organize with any Jewish organizations. And again, I'm 1/16th Palestinian. I'm 1/16th Lebanese. I'm 1/8 Yemeni. Quarter Iraqi. So, yeah. The Stop Asian Hate movement's frequent affinity for carceral policing, anti-Palestinian, Zionist, and global militarist frameworks, logics, and institutions crystallizes in the bureaucratic infrastructure of TAF, the organizational collaborations and interactions of Stop AAPI Hate. Given that these are arguably the most influential organizations in the Stop Asian Hate movement, it is crucial to delineate their relationship to each other. Stop Asian Hate states that in response to the original version of this article, it has not received funding from TAAF since 2022, and it does not have a working relationship with TAAF. The coalition does not dispute, however, that it obtained at least $1 million from TAAF as part of what Reuters describes as the largest ever philanthropic effort to support the AAPI community. As of this writing, the ADL supported TAAF continues to list Stop AAPI Hate and AAPI Equity Alliance as grantees on the Community Partners section of its website. AAPI Equity Alliance is one of the Stop Asian Hate's founding organizations, and Kulkarni is its executive director. While neither the current nor earlier versions of this article make specific claims about the ongoing status of Stop AAPI Hate's connection to TAAF, it is beyond dispute that Stop AAPI Hate has benefited from substantial financial and collaborative relationship with the foundation, including organizational co-authorship of documenting AAPI Hate Codebook. The opening page of the codebook acknowledges that TAF and the Stop AAPI Hate Coalition are collaborating to facilitate the documentation of AAPI experiences through multiple sources of data and methodologies. TAF's Advisory Council boasts current and former high-level administrators and staffers of the U.S. global counterinsurgency apparatus, including former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, Council on Foreign Relations member Rick Neal, three-time National Security Council appointee Farah Pandith, Hoover Institution Fellow and George Bush Administration appointee Lani Chen, and former World Bank Group President Jim Yong Kim, and others. While it does not feature a similar group of advisors, Stop AAPI Hate has quietly collaborated with and received backing from organizations that repress critics of the Zionist entity and people participating in Palestinian solidarity. The ADL supported a successful California State Assembly Bill, AB 2448, principally sponsored by Stop AAPI Hate, and while joining Stop AAPI Hate in support of the Jabara Hire No Hate Act, notably, the ADL cites and praises Stop AAPI Hate in its March 2021 letter to the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Justice as an example of community-based organization engaging collaborative efforts to collect vital hate data. Stop AAPI Hate has also benefited from substantive financial and research relationship with Davis Polk, a corporate law firm that made national news in October 2023 for sending offers of employment to Harvard and Columbia law students due to their criticisms of the Zionist entity's mounting genocidal campaign against Palestinians. Davis Polk provided significant pro bono legal research to support Stop AAPI Hate's 2023 Civil Rights Report, with one Davis Polk attorney contributing an additional $10,000 in private donations. The law firm openly boasts of its support for the Zionist entity, noting that it is a firm of choice for Zionist companies pursuing opportunities around the world and for international companies doing business with the Zionist entity. Davis Polk was one of 24 firms that signed a public letter to U.S. law school deans demanding action against anti-Semitic activities, including calling for the death of Jews and the eliminations of the Zionist entity. So there's a clear pattern of Zionist collaboration and Zionist behavior between the Stop API Hate and between the Zionists and the ADL. So, objecting to the description of its connection to the law firm in a previous version of this article, Stop API Hate contends that its relationship with Davis Polk was mischaracterized, asserting that the firm began providing limited pro bono to Stop AAPI Hate well before it took actions to rescind offers from Harvard and Columbia law school students. The coalition has not received support from Davis Polk since October 2023. Available evidence supports the characterization of Stop AAPI Hate's connection to Davis Polk as both substantive and sustained, however. Stop AAPI Hate's assertion that it only benefited from Davis Polk's pro bono contributions well before the firm retracted the students' job offers is also curious, if not deceiving, since the coalition concedes that it received support from Davis Polk until and possibly through the same month in which the employment retractions caused a stir in the corporate news cycle. Right? Further, Davis Polk's 2022 Racial Justice Pro Bono Update describes how it partnered with Stop AAPI Hate to create a toolkit for use by government leadership and school districts across the community. School districts wishing to implement Asian American studies and ethnic studies will also utilize the resources we contributed. A self-identified AAPI lawyer who is an associate in Davis Polk's litigation practice elaborates through the Davis Polk's partnership with Stop AAPI Hate. I've worked on 2 projects so far, one focused directly on addressing anti-AAPI hate and the other centered on promoting ethnic studies. The law firm's list of 2022 Pro Bono Award honorees highlights another attorney whose work for Stop AAPI Hate included an in-depth analysis of local discriminatory laws, which will aid in the organization's pursuit of legislative and judicial measures at the federal level. Additionally, the firm's 2023 Pro Bono Matters report boasts that the awardee directed the firm's donation to stop AAPI hate. Okay, responding to an earlier version of the article, Stop AAPI Hate asserts that it is not pro-Zionist, does not have a relationship with ADL, and does not tacitly comply with the ADL's positions. The coalition's correspondence directs attention to its public support for a ceasefire in Gaza, which would disarm the armed Palestinian resistance, which is, trying to liberate Palestine from the river to the sea, as well as its statement regarding egregious acts of hate towards the Amemsa, Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian community. From the horrific murder of Wadi al-Fayoumi and the attack on 3 Palestinian students in Vermont to the egregious comments from Representative Brian Mast and an Islamophobic headline from the Wall Street Journal. Stop AAPI Hate also emphasizes co-founder Kulkarni's decision to withdraw from Duke University's Combating Hate and Bias event in November 2023 over concerns that other speakers, including Greenblatt, opposed calls for a ceasefire. Again, a ceasefire would disarm the Palestinian resistance, and armed resistance is the only thing that will liberate Palestine. While it is beyond dispute that Stop AAPI Hate constantly signals anti-racist, anti-hate virtues in press conferences, public press releases, public statements, and many organizational activities, including its carceral criminological data collection practices, it also has a history of sharing platforms with entities including carceral state, Zionist, and pro-Zionist organizations to abrogate such avowed principles and commitments. Okay? And while it's beyond dispute, while the coalition denies any relationship with the ADL, Stop AAPI Hate, and TAAF, openly acknowledge while the coalition denies any relationship with the ADL, Stop AAPI Hate, and TAAF, openly acknowledge the ADL for providing invaluable feedback on a major working document published in 2021, the aforementioned Documenting AAPI Hate Codebook. The TAAF plus Stop AAPI Hate Working Group, which includes all 3 Stop AAPI Hate co-founders, acknowledges the colleagues and organizations who have provided invaluable feedback for this working document, specifically referencing the Anti-Defamation League and Asian Americans Advancing Justice. Repeatedly, Stop AAPI apparently consents to ADL chapter's online usage of Stop AAPI Hate's logo and published resources, including its national report, and this is evidence of such usage, So here's the ADL website, and here's Stop AAPI Hate. Over a year after Stop AAPI Hate's founding, the coalition participated alongside the ADL in a May 2021 event titled A Community United, a general convening against AAPI Hate, co-hosted by the National Association of Attorney Generals President and the District of Columbia Attorney General. The conveners listed Kulkarni and Greenblatt on the event program as co-panelists for a session themed The Rise of AAPI Hate and its real-world impact. ADL Senior Vice President and Chief Impact Officer Adam Neufeld took Greenblatt's place at the event. In January 2024, about 2 months after issuing its support for a ceasefire in Gaza, which would disarm the Palestinian resistance, and weeks after Kulkarni declined to participate in a Duke University event, Stop AAPI Hate, nonetheless joined the ADL and TAAF as communities, partners, and sponsors for a hate crime summit hosted by 17 separate government partners, including the FBI, Department of Justice, the Oakland and San Jose Police Departments, 6 separate district attorneys' offices, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the California Attorney General's Office. A feature panel seated Choi alongside an FBI special agent, the executive director of the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, and a coordinator from the California Attorney General's Office. Responding to a previous version of this article, Stop AAPI Hate contends that Choi's remarks at the Hate Crime Summit were specifically to demonstrate to a law enforcement-based audience how Stop AAPI Hate's data does not support carceral approaches consistent with Stop AAPI Hate's long-established positions. This rebuttal does not address the substance of the analysis offered here. However, even as Stop AAPI Hate consistently asserts and insists that its work and methods are non-carceral, the organization's data collection practices remain entirely compatible with criminological and carceral policing approaches, including liberal and reformist ones. By way of example, in addition to the previously mentioned examples, the US DOJ website prominently lists Stop AAPI Hate, the ADL, San Diego County Sheriff's Office, San Diego Police Department, and FBI in a resource titled "Who Should I Call If I Experience a Hate Incident?" Further indication of a carceral congruence between the ADL and Stop AAPI Hate's data gathering methods surfaces in the ADL's 2021 Audit of Anti-Semitic Incidents, which states that law enforcement agencies should use the data from the FBI, Department of Education, and NGOs such as ADL and Stop API Hate to anticipate where hate crimes are most likely to occur and proactively contact community members and institutions to strengthen relationships and collaboration. And here's that poster, right? So such cooperative interactions, collaborations, and methodological affinities with policing, carceral, and Zionist entities serve to undermine Stop AAPI Hate's declared commitment to confront racism at its root with comprehensive non-carceral solutions. Stop AAPI Hate makes mission claims, public statements, and assertions of the principle that that are contradicted or otherwise discredited by many of its affiliations, activities, and organizational interactions. There's clear evidence that the Stop Asian Hate movement, which this man is promoting, has ties to, the police state and the Zionist lobby and the ADL. So why isn't this man addressing that in this video? Again, this man, he's either naive, ignorant, malicious, or he's an operative, right? So yeah. So, and how do we reject or abolish Stop Asian Hate? AAPI Women Lead is a feminist anti-violence group in Oakland, and the San Diego organization Asian Solidarity Collective offer dynamic examples of anti-racist, abolition-oriented Black solidarity-aligned grassroots projects that largely reject the Stop Asian Hate movement's liberal demands for recognition from the carceral state. ASC, for example, refuses siloed multiculturalist definitions of anti-racism, framing its work as an ongoing effort to engage Asian Americans to be liberated from anti-Black racism, model minority myths, internalized colonialism, and white supremacy. Similarly, AAPI-WL emphasizes shared histories of violence when addressing anti-Asian racism, emphasizing that most of us came to these lands as guests of indigenous cultures because of racialized colonial wars, or because of, with the Vietnamese and the Hmong, because they were CIA collaborators. That's why the Hmong, there's so many Hmong in like Portland, Seattle, Anchorage, San Diego, Modesto, Turlock, right? Because they were CIA collaborators. And that's why you have Zionists like Forrest Dunbar from, formerly of the Anchorage Assembly, now of the Alaska State Senate, parading around these Hmong CIA collaborators from Mountain View in East Anchorage, right? So, again, so what does this liberal Zionist have to say
If I'm being real, it didn't
about the Stop Asian Hate movement?
really hit like it should have.
It didn't really hit like it should have. That's an understatement. That's an understatement. It didn't really hit like it should have. Well, look at what are their ulterior motives? What is their agenda? The fact that the Stop Asian Hate movement literally collaborates with the Zionist lobby, the ADL, and the police state, the carceral state, those are huge red flags, dude. Those are huge red flags. It didn't really hit like it should have. Such shallow, surface level pop culture punditry analysis. Liberal pop culture analysis. This man is a liberal pop culture pundit.
really lock in, didn't really protest that much. I mean,
it didn't lock in or protest that much. These people were associating with the police state, the carceral state, and the Zionist lobby. Are you kidding me? Such a shallow, surface level, pop culture pundit liberal take.
did, but not really. You got
They did, not really.
take influence from the BLM movement and go hard for your people just like that. And recently online,
Influence from the BLM movement? What about influence from, the pro-Palestine movement? What about influence from the pro-Palestine movement? Huh? What about that, eh? Again, this man won't even mention the word Palestinian. And I don't know if it's because he's naive. I don't know if it's because he's misinformed. I don't know if he's being malicious. I don't know if he's funded by any of the police state or the carceral state or the Zionist lobby. He does go to Stanford, so that is a possibility. So yeah, I don't know. That raises several suspicions on his part.
and I've seen different things about black people versus Asian people. And as an Asian American, you better respect black folks because historically, black people paved the way for Asian Americans, bro. And me being
Black people paved the way for Asian Americans. Who did Allah reveal the Quran to? Allah revealed the Quran to an Asian man from Mecca. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, West Asian from Mecca. Yes, Bilal radiallahu anhu was the first man to call adhan. But in many ways, West Asians paved the way for sub-Saharan Africans. Who brought Islam to Africa? Who brought poetry, Islamic calligraphy? Us West Asians did. So you better respect West Asians. And this is another surface level. Oh, also many of the Africans who were trafficked to the Americas in the transatlantic slave trade were Muslim. So again, yet another surface level, shallow, pop culture punditry take from this man, Love Hilal.
being, half and half, I can be the bridge between the two worlds. That was so corny. Let me stop.
Again, this is the reason why American culture is cringe, because he lacks historical context. Learn some history, young man.
Beginning of time, Asian people have been easy comedic relief. Well, in 2024, the tide has shifted. Being Asian is now a trend. Now you might be wondering, glorious dear Master Hilal, how could Asians possibly be trending right now? There's this thing called Asian fishing, where non-Asian folk, typically white people, do questionable things to appear somewhat racially ambiguous. They want to be Asian. A couple of these things include taping their eyes up, acting all submissive, and honestly childlike.
Yeah, the whole anime, K-pop thing, I just find it weird. Why are you idolizing countries that normalize the Zionist entity and collaborate with the Zionists, right? And we're going to get to that point. We're going to get to that point because I have some criticisms. Where is this point in the video?
Talk to Asian women. Almost all women of color experience.
Dear East Asians, you collaborate with the Zionist entity. Don't even dare call yourself people of color. Matter of fact, anybody, any country, any person from any country that collaborates with the Zionist entity loses their person of color card. You collaborate with the Zionists, you normalize the Zionists any way, shape, or form, you lose your person of color card. I'm sorry. The way you do, it don't work that way. It just doesn't work the way you do it. Because you're guilty of genocide. Yes.
Is this leechery?
Yeah, when your country's guilty of settler colonialism and genocide, you don't get to call yourself a person of color.
That's not what I'm talking about today.
Talk to him. Really, bro? Come on, bro. So East Asians don't get to call themselves people of color because, again, Zionist normalization. Zionist normalization. You are not people of color. You are white adjacent. You are white adjacent.
It's damn near every e-girl on this app with a pink headset sexualizing herself on
I'm saying.
OnlyFans. And this isn't just a one-off. This is a phenomenon on the internet.
It's a phenomenon and it's a problem, and it needs to be addressed, yet you don't get to call yourself a person of color because your country normalizes the Zionist entity. What else does Love Hilal say in this video?
We're Clarissa.
Who are overly obsessed with Korean culture to the point where they think they're on the team, bruh. And similarly, we Abus have the same effect. There is an abundance of anime fans in 2024. Cool, right? I love anime. Now,
Anime is cringe, it's soy, it's weak. There's a reason why people view Japanese and Koreans as weak and soy. And they view, and I've seen this in my life, they view Yemenis, Palestinians, Iraqis, and to a lesser extent Lebanese as strong, masculine. Why is that? Look at their lifestyle, look at our lifestyle. And I'm saying this as someone who's 20% Iraqi and 10% Yemeni, mostly from the north, from Amran. I do a family down south in Hadramaut. But yeah.
growing up, I would have been crucified. They would have stoned me like it was 200 BC if they found out I was watching Beyblade. Fast forward to now, your favorite celebrities, your favorite influencers are all talking about how they love anime. I'm glad peak fiction is getting the love that it deserved initially.
Anime is cringe, bro.
But goddamn, did we have to pave the way back then? Now, not only has anime been getting more love, Asia, well, specifically Japan, has been getting a little bit too much love to the point where it's kind of weird. I'm Japanese. I understand that Japan is cool. Japan has a very rich culture.
How is Japan cool? How does Japan have a rich culture when your culture is literally Zionist normalization? Let's go through the facts. And actually, we'll get into it because he's going to mention problems in Asia.
Can we please stop the thing versus thing in Japan? McDonald's versus McDonald's in Japan. People are like, oh, toilet versus toilet in Japan. Japan is cool and all, but you're damn near fetishizing it, bro. Now, a lot of these issues that I touched on throughout this video are typically towards Asian Americans. But in the topic of Asia, I need to talk about things back home, right? Now, I know a lot of issues such as colorism are really...
Oh, let's talk about issues in Asia. This is where I'm salivating. I'm like, I want to talk about this because it must be talked about. Japan's relationships with the Zionist entity, because Japan is a bunch of Zionist normalizers. So check it. So Japan, the Zionist entity exports to Japan, consisting primarily of polished diamonds, chemical products, machinery, electrical equipment, and citrus fruit, are worth $810 million. Japanese exports to the Zionist entity, consisting primarily of motor vehicles, machinery, electrical equipment, and chemical products, are collectively worth $1.3 billion. Since the 2010s, trade between the Zionist entity and Japan have expanded considerably, with the economic relations between the two countries having increased significantly, particularly in the realm of high technology, as well as the forging of partnerships between companies and venture capitalists among the two nations. According to the Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, 35 Japanese companies had subsidiaries in the Zionist entity by 2015, with as many as 50 in November 2016. In 2021, data compiled by the firm Harrell Hertz shows a surge of $1.1 billion of Japanese investment in the Zionist high-tech industry. Total Japanese investment in the Zionist high-tech industry was $2.9 billion in 2021. Japanese investors accounted for 15.8% of all foreign investment in the Zionist economy. Total trade volume is $3.574 billion. As of 2022, the Zionist entity and Japan are negotiating a free trade deal. The move will boost Japanese exports and make Japanese exports cheaper for Zionist settlers. About 90 Japanese companies worked in 2023 in occupied 1948 Palestine, tripled the number in 2014. In 2023, the Zionist entity in Japan signed a work holiday agreement which allows citizens of either company to work for up to a year in the other country. This agreement came in part due to a Japanese interest in the Zionist entity's high-tech sector and the Zionist entity's human talent. The agreement is aimed at citizens between the ages of 18 and 30. Direct flights between Tokyo and Tel Aviv commenced in 2023, operated by Zionist airline El Al. Ambassador Gilad Cohen remarked following the signage of the agreements, Zionists and Japanese have never been closer, and I'm sure that our relations will continue to deepen, and we will continue to collaborate and benefit for the benefit of citizens of the Zionist settlers and the Japanese collaborators. Also, the Zionist entity and Japan signed a 2022 defense cooperation deal focused on equipment, defense technology, and more. Japanese Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada said the deal will help Japan advance a free and open Indo-Pacific. Following the Zionist Tufan al-Aqsa, Japanese company Itochu Corporation announced in February that it will end its partnership with the Zionist weapons manufacturer Elbit Systems by the end of February. That sounds like too little, too late. Universities in both countries are making special efforts to conduct lively exchange of ideas. In 2012, a symposium to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the diplomatic relations was held at Zionist Hebrew University of Qudus, you know, the one that was founded by Zionists Albert Einstein and Chaim Weizmann to discuss the issues of regional, bilateral, and cultural exchanges. The Zionist Association of Japanese Studies was also launched on that occasion. So fuck Japan and fuck South Korea. We'll get into South Korea because that's another problem. And this is a problem that Love Hilal won't even touch with a 10-foot stick because he's a liberal Zionist. Or he's just straight up ignorant. South Korea has relations with the Zionist entity. So, Korea and the Zionist entity established diplomatic relations on April 10, 1962. And relations began immediately following the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950. So the official ones was 1962. Let's talk about economic relations. So trade between the Zionist entity and South Korea grew by a factor of 6 from $148 million to about $1 billion between 1990 and 2000. Within 10 years, South Korea controlled 15% of the Zionist market in imported automobiles and 20% of that for cellular phones. Zionist exports to South Korea also grew exponentially during the same time period. In 2001, South Korea and the Zionist entity signed a joint agreement to establish a research and development fund for the purpose of developing new products. Since the summer of 2010, an annual event, the Korea Business Conference, aimed at increasing business activity between the Zionist entity and Korea, including trade, investment, and business partnerships. The conference was initiated by Itzik Yona, CEO of Yonako Group, in cooperation with the Zionist Export Institute. One of the major consequences of the conference is to increase awareness of the possibility of mutual investments between the two countries. And among other things, as a direct result of the conference, for the first time, a Korean venture capital fund invested for the first time in a Zionist venture company from Rehovot. A literal Zionist settlement, right? In August 2010, Korea Venture and Investment Corporation, a state-backed fund management company, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Zionist entity's Vertex Capital to raise a $150 million fund, which will be used to finance joint ventures or the merger and acquisition of small and mid-sized venture firms in the two countries. In 2011, a multi-member parliamentary delegation met with the Zionist terrorist Shimon Peres at the King David Hotel in Qudus. What's the old name for it? What's the Arabic name? There's no. Oh. The delegation was led by Lee Byung-suk, former chairman of the National Assembly's Land, Transport, and Maritime Affairs Committee. Also present was Park Jin, former chairman, literally a jinn, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, former chairman of the Foreign Affairs and Trade Committee. On 11 November 2013, Korean ambassador to the Zionist entity, Kim Il-soo, announced that the Zionist entity in Korea could become an economic powerhouse, referring to high-tech cooperation between the countries. The announcement was issued during the first Creative Economic Forum between Korea and the Zionist entity held in Jaffa, which featured the exposure of the Korea Zionist high-tech network, a project aimed to increase industrial collaboration in various high-tech fields. In October 2017, the Zionist Innovation Authority published a report recommending deeper cooperation between the two countries' tech sectors, given complementary advantages between the two economies. By virtue of the complementary comparative advantages between the Zionist and Korean innovation, great commercial potential exists at the point of interface between the two countries. The Zionist entity in South Korea signed a free trade agreement in August 2019, the Zionist entity's first free trade agreement with an East Asian country, and South Korea's first tariff-free agreement with the settler colony. So, military relations. The Zionist entity has sold drones to South Korea, including the Harpy UAV. South Korea was competing with Italy's Alenia Armaci M-346 Master in a tender to supply training aircraft to the IOF. The Korean Air Force had accused the Zionist entity of giving Italy preferred treatment since negotiations began. In 2012, the South Korean government offered its final industrial cooperation package in a bid to get the Zionist Defense Ministry, the Zionist Terrorism Ministry, to select Korean aerospace industries T-50 Golden Eagle as its next fighter trainer. The Zionist Terrorist Ministry Chief of Staff, Udi Shani, flew to South Korea for talks about the purchase. The deal was reported over $1 billion. The Italians were eventual winners in a decision likely to upset South Korea. South Korea had also expressed interest in purchasing the Zionist entity's Iron Dome system, but that sale was then seen as under threat. So, Seoul National University opened in June 2024. Seoul National University opened a research center for Zionist studies dedicated to the study of Jewish civilization and Zionist society. And then we go on to China. Again, East Asia is a fucking Zionist shithole. I'm gonna say it as is. East Asia is a fucking Zionist shithole, and I will never work with East Asia. So, throughout the past year of the increased genocide against Gaza, China has repeatedly called for return of the peace process. This is from Truth Out. It's by, the photos by Pedro Pardo. It's by Shireen Akram Boshar. So throughout the past year of the Zionist entity's increased genocide in Gaza and on all Palestinians in general, China has repeatedly called for a return to the peace process and an implementation of the long-discussed two-state solution. But this rhetoric is far from signaling opposition in defiance to the Zionist entity. Such calls are hardly very radical. They seek a return to the U.S.-led peace process and two-state solution traditionally championed by the U.S. Both peace process and the two-state solution have sharply been criticized by Palestinians and the Palestinian Solidarity Movement globally as mechanisms that preclude the Palestinian right of return and takes as their starting point the theft of the majority of Palestinian land. Again, I have family from Alid and Al-Ramla. Many of my cousins, I still have cousins in Alid and Al-Ramla, but some of them were ethnically cleansed during the Nakba in 1948. That's why I have cousins in Gaza. That's why I have cousins in Anaheim. That's why I have cousins in Philly, okay? Nonetheless, China's moderated criticism of the Zionist entity has not been matched by any efforts to advance such a flawed process. So get this, Chinese-owned companies operate the port of Haifa, and they're leading a big expansion of the port in Ashdod, which is just north of Gaza. They're building an expansion of the Jaffa light rail system. So Chinese capital is heavily invested in the literal infrastructure of genocide. If tomorrow the Chinese company said, we're going to shut down the port of Haifa, we're not going to allow any weapons or materials to support the genocide, we would have an enormous impact on the development things in Gaza. And they're not doing that. I think it's important to note because there's not a genuine solidaristic interest in the liberation of Palestine. Indeed, the Chinese state has prohibited basic demonstrations of solidarity with Palestine confiscating Palestinian flags, and preventing mobilizations in support of Gaza. Some have pointed to a decline in trade between China and the Zionist entity in 2023 as evidence that the relation has hit a turning point, if not a breaking point. But while the dip in 2023 was real and likely due to a variety of factors, it is unlikely to mark a rupture in the relationship, which has been steadily growing. China collaboration with the Zionist entity in fields like technology, AI, and energy have drastically expanded in the recent decades. In 2022, China became the Zionist entity's largest trading partner globally and its largest in Asia. Recently, Chinese Zionist trade hit a record of $20 billion per year. Chinese and Indian companies have privatized the Zionist entity's Haifa port, which Netanyahu allowed against the wishes of the U.S. China's Belt and Road Initiative, begun in 2013, encouraged more Chinese companies to invest in the Zionist entity or set up research and development centers in occupied 1948 Palestine. In 2014, Tel Aviv University and Tsinghua University set up a $300 million research center. In 2015, Peking University and Tel Aviv University signed a memorandum of joint understanding to establish a joint research institute. That same year, Shantou University and the Zionist entity's Technion Institute of Technology established the Guangdong Technion Institute of Technology. As Chinese activists in the Palestine in solidarity with Palestine explained, these collaborations are some of the examples of Chinese university students engaging with Zionist institutions as if they were neutral, without recognizing that Zionist universities are complicit in the ongoing genocide, occupation, settler colonialism, and oppression of Palestinian people. These same activists have outlined some of the collaborations between the Zionist entity and China on surveillance technology. In particular, the Chinese state-backed company Hikvision is complicit in policing and surveillance in Palestine, China, and even the U.S. The Zionist entity uses Hikvision to surveil on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, logging the information in a database monitoring Palestinians in the West Bank specifically. Hikvision also provides technology to surveil and police the Uyghur Muslim population in the Xinjiang region of China, and Hikvisions are used in numerous other countries, including the US, by the NYPD, among others, despite federal bans of the technology in the US. China benefited from the normalization process that began in 2020, allowing it to further its influence in investments in West Asia. With the Zionist entity integrated into economic cooperation more openly across the region, China became increasingly able to expand projects that encompass both the Zionist entity and the Gulf region. The normalization process has opened up possibilities for the extension of BRI's project into the region. For example, and since the start of normalization, China, the UAE, and the Zionist entity have all increased their collaboration in tech centers, including in AI research, bringing together, for example, China's Beijing Genomics Institute, Abu Dhabi's G42, both of which are also building labs and offices in occupied 1948 Palestine, as well as energy and development. The normalization process and the thawing of the Zionist entity's relationships with the UAE offers more economic openings for China, which it has in recent years deepened its relationship with reactionary actors across the region, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and most recently Sudan's Army General. Clearly, their priority is stability for business rather than justice for Palestinians or any other beleaguered group in the region. China is also cognizant that across West Asia, general opinion of the U.S. is poor, since it is rightly understood as responsible for the continuance of genocide in Gaza. China hopes to use this crisis as an opportunity to portray itself as an alternative to the U.S., one more trustworthy to Arab states and to countries in the global South. More broadly, in July, China brought various Palestinian factions together in Beijing to move forwards towards national unity and to hash out differences between Fatah and Hamas. While it may have been largely symbolic, the event was part of China's attempt to increase its status and role in the region. Many have praised China for facilitating this convening, but little has come as a result of it. Even before October 7, China established a strategic relationship with the PA and its president Mahmoud Abbas, with whom it had been nurturing a relationship for years. The Palestinian Authority is widely criticized by the Palestinian left and others across the Palestinian society for its security, coordination, and collaboration with the Zionist entity. China's currying of favor with the PA also points its goal of increasing its influence across the region rather than a sincere desire for Palestinian liberation. In a similar vein, China mediated normalization between Saudi, a'udhu billah, and Iran in early 2023. Iran also is a'udhu billah, in early 2023, demonstrating its interest in both economic stability for its own gain across the region, as well as for an increased desire to hold the reins in political negotiations, and perhaps to take the place in the U.S. in doing so. China clearly sees itself as a key player in the new post-2021 status quo across the Middle East region, with more emboldened reactionary states looking to better interstate relationships for the economic benefit at the expense of wider populations. China's position on Palestine is in many ways is representative of the BRICS Plus organization member countries. BRICS Plus representing Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, UAE, and other states claims to represent an alternative possibility, a bulwark against the US, and a defense of countries throughout the global South. However, as in the case of China, BRICS Plus countries often rhetorically support Palestinians and champion the two-state solution, while simultaneously furthering their investments in collaboration with the Zionist entity. This is most obvious the case of India, and this is why people hate India, the fifth largest trading partner of the Zionist entity, which has actively supported the Zionist entity in its ongoing genocide and settler colonialism in Palestine with arms sales and increased its partnership with Zionist universities complicit with genocide after decades of nurturing close ties to the Zionist entity, going back to at least the 1980s and 1990s, and championing similarly right-wing violent Islamophobia. The fudge is this card? Russia, too, has strong economic relations with the Zionist entity and continued to provide coal to the Zionist entity throughout the duration of the genocide. Brazil and even South Africa, the country that brought the Zionist entity to the ICJ, have refused to stop their coal and oil sales to the Zionist entity. To be clear, this approach is contrary to that advocated by the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions (BDS) movement. By cooperating with the Zionist entity rather than isolating it amid a genocide, these states and their state-backed corporations and technologies are an obstacle to Palestinian liberation rather than part of the solution. Again, this is a topic that Love Hilal won't touch with a 10-foot stick, partially because I believe, and I hope he proves me wrong on this, partially because I believe he is funded by the Zionists, the police state, or some sort of carceral state formation. Okay? This is what I believe. This Love Halal guy, he's a big problem.
Rampant back there. I know K-pop idols be bleaching their skin because anything dark is bad. I mean, Asian beauty standards as a whole are pretty weird, like the weight standards for body types. To wrap things up, Asian people will always be known as a punchline, never taken seriously, or just known as an easy target, unless we decide to stand up for—
Dude, speak for East Asians. West Asians been standing up for ourselves. Look at Iraqis, look at Palestinians, look at Lebanese Shia Muslims, look at Yemenis. We've been standing up for ourselves, and that's a fact.